This is Tim. Welcome to the Mathly YouTube channel. So today we're going to be talking about problem number 18 from Sprint Round 12116. This is a middle school test that was given out in 2021. So check this out. There's a box, there's blocks, and so we've got red blocks and blue blocks, right? Now, there are 219 ways to select two blocks of the same color, 216 ways to select two blocks with different colors. All right, so we just want to know how many blocks are in the box. So the first thing I want to observe is that if there are 219 ways for the box to be the same color and 216 ways to be different colors, then that gives us a total of 435 ways to select the blocks. Because they're either going to be the same color or they're going to be different, and that's going to give you all the different things that can happen. Okay, so there are 435 ways to select the blocks, and let's say that there are X blocks, right? We don't know how many blocks there are, so we're going to call it X. Okay, I'm going to take X blocks, and I'm going to take two of them, right? How many ways are there to do that? So if I want to select two blocks from a total of X, here's how we do this, right? I'm going to have to take a block. There's X ways to do that. But then I have to take a second block, and there are X minus 1 ways to pick the second block, right? After I've already picked one block out, there's only X minus 1 left in the box. Okay, and so I pick one block, I pick another block, that's X times X minus 1. But I might have picked this one first and then the other one second, right? So when I do my X times X minus 1, I'm going to get twice as much as I should. So I'm going to have to divide that by 2, and that's going to give me the total number of ways to select the blocks. In other words, that's going to give me the 435 that they gave to us in the problem. Let's go ahead and solve this, right? X times X minus 1 is now going to equal 870. All right, you could turn this into a quadratic if you wanted. X squared minus X equals 870. X squared minus X minus 870 equals 0. Quadratic formula, whatever. Factor it, whatever. Let's do it this way. I've got two numbers that are right next to each other, and they're going to multiply to be 870. Because they're so close to each other, I basically want to look for something around the square root of 870. Now we know that 29 squared is 841. We know that 30 squared is 900. So we figure 870 is probably going to be the product of those two numbers. And in fact, what we find is that 30 times 29 does equal 870. And what that tells us is that X equals 30. Okay, I guess I could stop there, right? That's the answer to the problem. I want to talk a little bit more about this, though, because there's some interesting theory about probability that we can discuss here. First off, if X equals 30, let's make sure that these two numbers work out, right? In other words, if the problem writers had given you something that said there are 220 ways to select two blocks of the same color, 215 ways to select them with different colors, you would have done the problem the same way and still gotten a 30, but it would have been a broken problem, right? You can't actually come up with a number of blocks that make that work. There are only certain numbers that are going to work with this, right? So what we actually want to do is figure out, okay, how many of these 30 blocks are red and how many of them are blue? So the first place I want to look here is this 216. There's 216 ways to select two blocks with different colors. I have red blocks, I have blue blocks. Now, if I want to select two blocks with different colors, I'm going to take one of the reds and one of the blues, right? So I'm going to take the number of red blocks times the number of blue blocks, and that's going to give me 216. So let me write it this way. Red times blue equals 216. But we also know that the red blocks plus the blue blocks equals 30. Okay, so this gives us an algebra equation. We're actually never going to know how many reds and how many blues we have, but we can figure out how many, we can figure out the split, right? I'm looking for two numbers that add up to 30, multiply to be 216. Now you can actually turn this into a quadratic equation if you want, but ultimately, if you end up factoring it, you're going to be right back to the same spot, which is finding two numbers that add up to 30 and multiply to be 216. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me just find two numbers that add up to 30. 20, 10. Okay, 20 and 10. 20 times 10, though, is only 200. I need numbers. I need a product that's higher. I need to get up to 216. So 20 and 10 are basically too far apart, right? The farther apart the numbers are, as long as they add up to the same thing, the lower your product is going to be. Think about it this way, right? 20 times 10 is 200. 25 times 5 is 125. 29 times 1 is only 29. So the farther apart the numbers are, the lower the product is. 20 times 10 gave me 200, and that was too small. So I'm going to need to narrow it up a little bit. Right? Notice that the 216 has lots of 2s and 3s in its prime factorization. So what I'm thinking here is going to be, I don't want to do 11 and 19. How about 12 and 18, right? 12 and 18. 12 plus 18 adds up to 30, and multiply it out. Yes, you do get 216. So it looks like we can, if we choose 12 of one color, 18 of the other color, we will get 216 ways to select 2 blocks with different colors. Does that also give us 219 ways to select 2 blocks with the same color? Well, let's try it out, right? So we're going to have, if I have 12 blocks of one color, remember using the same formula that we had over here, we're going to have 12 times 11, right? In other words, I pick one of the 12 blocks out, and then I pick one of the 11 remaining blocks out, but I could have done them in either order, so that's going to end up dividing by 2. And then the other color has 18 blocks, so I'm going to take 18 times 17 and divide that by 2. Let's see what happens here, and hopefully we get 219, right? 12 times 11, well, 12 over 2 is just 6, so 6 times 11 is 66. 18 over 2 is 9, so I'm looking at 9 times 17, which is 153. And if I add 66 and 153, I get 219. Perfect. All right, so if I have 12 blocks of one color, 18 of the other, there are indeed 219 ways to select 2 blocks of the same color, right? This would be how many ways there are to select 2 blocks from the color that has 12 blocks. This would be how many ways to select 2 blocks from the color that has 18. I add them together and I get 219. And of course, remember, if I pick one from the 12 color and one from the 18 color, there's 12 ways times 18 ways, which is 216. So we see that the 219 and the 216 do work out and give us a total for each one of those, which of course also gives us 435 ways to select the blocks, because there are 30 total blocks, and that gives us 30 times 29 divided by 2. And that's how it's done.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim. Hope you're enjoying our videos. If so, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that sort of thing. But what I'd really want to invite you to do is to send us an email at media@mathleague.org. Tell us which problems you'd like to see us cover next in our video series. Take care and see you in the next video.